As I'm learning, there are really a ton of special places down here in the southern part of Turkey, but today I'm in what is perhaps the most special of them all. Not far from the Syrian border, there's a place that has brought into question the very understanding of history as we know it. It's most commonly called Göbekli Tepe, and it was essentially forgotten by humanity for many thousands of years. Göbekli Tepe is generally thought to be the oldest temple in the world, with about 12,000 years of age. That makes it 7,000 years older than Stonehenge or the Great Pyramids of Giza. Locals living in the area were aware of the ruins, but in this part of Turkey, there's practically remnants of the distant past everywhere. But Göbekli Tepe only started to be widely known about when excavations began in 1995. And since excavations began, Göbekli Tepe not only turned into an archaeological hotspot, but also an increasingly visited tourist destination. But between conspiracies and myths about the place that we'll also address in this video, I realized the only way to get a real understanding of Göbekli Tepe would be to see it with my own eyes. So while traveling around Turkey, I made a stop in the beautiful nearby city of Sanliurfa, which you history buffs might know by the name of Edessa. For locals, this city is simply referred to as Urfa. And getting to Göbekli Tepe from Sanliurfa is pretty easy, but usually it's going to be most convenient to just take a taxi. I have heard that there are a few buses that go here per day, but I don't think their schedules are that convenient, and I'm not sure how on time they run. Luckily for me, when I visited, I happened to cross paths with a taxi driver that wanted to visit the site himself as well. So we agreed to just visit the ruins together. And despite not having a common language to speak, having a local there certainly made a difference. It's about a 30-minute scenic drive without traffic. While it used to only cost a few dollars or euros to enter here, they recently did raise the price to 21 euros for foreigners. For Turkish people, it's still pretty cheap. I think it's 60 lira. But then if you're not from Turkey, it's going to cost you, well, a little bit more money than it did before. But before actually visiting the Göbekli Tepe ruins, there's a kind of interactive exhibition that goes over a lot of the main points of Göbekli Tepe's history. And part of it is really trippy. But I was really here just to visit the ruins, and they would be like a 10-minute walk away, but there's a free shuttle that the staff insists you take up the small hill to get to them. But the Turkish government has allowed the private Doges group what seems to be a significant amount of say in how Göbekli Tepe is run. As in, it's currently being treated like a tourist attraction, perhaps more than the immensely important archaeological and historical site that it is. And the Doges group really seems to have a lot of say in things to do with tourism around Turkey. A luxury hotel I stayed at in Cappadocia was owned by them, and the new Galata port in Istanbul was also a project that the large corporate power was involved in. So they seem to have creeped into many of the tourism projects around Turkey, and if I had to guess, the free shuttle has something to do with that too. But I'm really not here today to observe the way that this site is currently being managed, so let's see what it's like to actually visit the ruins of Göbekli Tepe. So at the site, there's a network of walkways to take you around, and the active excavation sites are clearly marked. There's information throughout on these plaques, but today there are hardly any other people visiting. In fact, I'd say today there's more people working here than visiting at leisure. But in the past years, visitor numbers have been rising, and based on trends, this year will likely see more than 1 million visitors. So I'd say I got lucky today. But the essence of what makes this place so special is that after people realized just how old Göbekli Tepe is and how advanced it was, there was a shift in the whole conception of how advanced humans actually were 12,000 years ago. There are definitely open questions as to what exactly Göbekli Tepe was used for, and it's unlikely that a definite answer will ever appear for everything. But it is clear that it was a temple or place used for some kind of rituals. And I think it's important to keep in mind that this place was built around 10,000 years before any of the Abrahamic religions found in the area today. So those rituals could very well have followed systems or beliefs that we today just won't necessarily be able to fully understand. The ruins are really pretty massive. On the UNESCO website, the aerial footage can show you just how extensive the site is too. And the condition in which you find everything varies a lot from section to section. As you can see on the map here, 6 different buildings have been excavated. But it's building B that is the most striking, and that's perhaps because it's the most set up to visit. This giant roof was built here to protect the ruins, and it seems that some kind of further construction or reinforcement is underway during my visit. Plus, construction here has been the site of a little bit of controversy too. Back in 1994, the German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt is said to have first recognized the need for excavation, which started the following year. And Klaus joined an entire team of archaeologists to do excavations for many years after that. But Klaus passed away in 2014, and in 2018, his wife Sigdum Kuksal Schmidt, who is also an archaeologist, witnessed damage to the site due to what she said was the pouring of concrete. But the Turkish Ministry of Tourism just denied it, and as far as I can tell, the issue still hasn't been addressed. As a visitor, there's just no way to know exactly what happened. But there are two out there conspiracies or myths about Göbekli Tepe that kind of do the place a disservice given how amazing its true history is, so let's talk about them real quick. Some have unfoundedly claimed, with a lot of varied reasoning, that Göbekli Tepe was purposefully covered or hidden to hide something. You've got the classic conspiracy that aliens built it and then covered it up. And then from there you'll find various theories as to why the temple was ever covered over the course of 12,000 years. And I mean, I'm someone who knows very little about archaeology, but the most likely reason seems to be that natural erosion just caused it to get covered in dirt and dust. But again, I was only visiting as a very interested traveler. And all the mystery to it definitely does add to Göbekli Tepe's charm, but it's probably not all that important when the main idea of it being the world's first temple seems to be well founded after years of study and excavation. And then there's been claims that all the archaeological activity at Göbekli Tepe has been stopped recently. But this is just absurd. It was clearly an active archaeological site when I visited. I do get the impression that these claims tend to come from people who haven't actually visited Göbekli Tepe, but perhaps somebody visited during a period between archaeological digs. What is not myth or conspiracy, however, is that Göbekli Tepe was a site of more advanced civilization than historians had believed to exist 12,000 years ago before its excavation. And what's also for sure is that given its advanced architecture for the time and the scale of the place, there had to have been a huge amount of people working to build it. Plus, many of the columns do have pretty intricate animal carvings in them that require a level of skill to complete. Shortly before my visit, a large boar carving had just been uncovered. And there's almost sure to be more interesting finds as the ongoing excavations continue. Then at the highest point of the temple, there's this old tree, but it's not just any old tree. This tree is what's known as a wishing tree, and it also brings us back to the name that Göbekli Tepe is known by. If you translate Göbekli Tepe from Turkish to English, it roughly means Potbelly Hill. But Göbekli Tepe is not the name that everybody knows this place by. The province of Sanliurfa is actually a majority Kurdish part of Turkey. There are Turks and Arabs living there, but the majority of its residents are Kurdish. And please excuse my pronunciation here, but in the Kurdish language, Göbekli Tepe has the name of Gire Mirazan, which translates to Wish Hill. And people still come here to leave their wishes on the wishing tree today. There's a certain kind of majestic feeling to sitting at the highest point where the wishing tree is. And being the highest point, there is a pristine view out into the horizon there. There is a very unique sense of continuity to looking out on that view that our ancestors looked out on 12,000 years ago. Now, for obvious reasons, it's not okay to go down in the excavation sites at Göbekli Tepe. But back in the city of Sanliurfa, there's the Sanliurfa Archaeology and Mosaic Museum. It's a truly massive museum with a dedicated part housing a full-size replica of what Göbekli Tepe would have looked like around 12,000 years ago. So after an enthralling trip to the world's oldest temple, I headed back to Sanliurfa. Kebab. And once I was able to curb my hunger with an amazing lunch of kebab, baklava, and a local specialty known as shig kufta, I visited the museum to get up close. The replica is just of Building D, but the ability to go and stand within it gives you a real idea of how impressive of an architectural feat it would have been 12,000 years ago. And beyond the replica of Göbekli Tepe, the museum itself is really a must-visit place to learn about history and witness an intense collection of relics. Right now I'm in the kind of Roman section, and before that there was the Greek section. And before that all the Neolithic, and going back, tens of thousands of years. And then the next section is the Islamic era, which I assume would be leading up to the present. This museum is also where the 11,000-year-old Urfa man or Balikligul statue is kept. Until a slightly older statue was rediscovered last year during excavations in the area, this sculpture was thought to be the absolute oldest life-size sculpture of a human being in the world. But neighboring countries in the region, recently relics like these have been destroyed, actually, destroying history even. So the purpose of this museum is all the more important right now. This museum, along with the world's biggest museum of mosaics in the nearby city of Gaziantep, are definitely a good reason to come down to this part of Turkey. So I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed visiting Göbekli Tepe and Sanliurfa. I mean, when I decided to visit this part of Turkey, I just didn't know exactly what to expect as a visitor. But sometimes with travel, the best thing is to just go and see a place. And beyond all I learned about humankind on this visit, I also did a lot of eating. So much in fact that I had to make a separate video about the insanely awesome food culture that you'll find in both Sanliurfa and Gaziantep. So you might enjoy giving that one a watch next. And if you enjoy my travel videos, then make sure you're subscribed to my channel, and I'll see you all in another video.